Hey, greetings everyone. It's Glenn Kellaway coming to you from the basement. This is part 6 and my last and final installment of 101 albums you need to hear before you die. Crazy. I hope none of you have died between part 1 and part 6. You would have missed the last 25. But let's get started. Now, I do want to make a point. I didn't know how to end this thing. And my initial ending was going to be number 2, listen to Bob Dylan's great trilogy of albums, Bringing It All Back Home, Highway 61, and Blonde on Blonde. And number 1 was going to be all the Beatles albums. And then I just, it didn't sit right with me to do that. So I stayed with the theme, left all the mainstream stuff out of it for the most part. There's the odd one that's popped in and out, but so I hope you enjoy the ending and I don't disappoint you. Let's get started at number 25. I got to turn these over. One of the great guitar players of all time, not a mainstream guitar player, a bluegrass flat picker, but Tony Rice. I mean, if you've never heard Tony Rice play a guitar or sing, it's beautiful baritone voice, and just an incredible guitar player. I strongly suggest you check out Manzanita. It's got a mix of instrumental type jazzy influenced tunes, and it's got some bluegrass and folky type stuff. No banjo on this album as far as I know. I don't think there's any. So it's all guitars, mandolins, dobros. He does a killer cover of Home from the Forest, the great Gordon Lightfoot song. Tony was a huge Gordon Lightfoot fan. There's actually a CD out called Tony Rice Sings and Plays Gordon Lightfoot, which is absolutely gorgeous. Check out Tony Rice. You'll be wondering what you've been missing all these years if you've never listened to Tony play. My friend Sam St. John has turned me on to some amazing albums, and one he kept telling me to buy, and I kept ignoring him, and then finally I decided I better buy it just to get him off my back. Jesus. Marty Stewart, Way Out West. So my experience with Marty Stewart goes back to I'm going to say 1979, 1980. At a bluegrass festival, I was fortunate enough to see Lester Flatt, the Lester Flatt Band. Him and Earle weren't playing together by that time. And a young phenom by the name of Marty Stewart was playing in that band, and boy, is he a hot picker and just a kid. And then he turned country, and I'm not into that Garth Brooks era of country music when they all, you know what I mean. And I tagged Marty Stewart with that label, and Sam kept saying, "You got to hear this album. You got to hear this album." It was produced by Mike Campbell, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and man, this haunting guitar and beautiful songs. It's just such a cool album. Really, really good. Like, check this out if you're, because it's in the kind of country genre. If you don't like country, it might scare you off. Don't let it. Check this album out. It is fantastic. Thank you, Sam. Okay, next I'm going with a band that I will be spotlighting on an upcoming video very shortly. My favorite Canadian band. I actually got to see them on Friday night. Lowest of the Low. This album is called Shakespeare My Butt, and it is one of the greatest albums. It's actually been voted one of the top 100 Canadian albums of all time. Shakespeare My Butt. Infection. Ron Hawkins, the singer and songwriter, great songwriter. The lyrics are incredible, really cool lyrics, great guitar-driven riffs, and just foot stomping, really high energy, great music. Lowest of the Low, Shakespeare My Butt. Do not miss this, and please watch my video on these guys. You'll see the title come up, Lowest of the Low, and probably say, I don't know those guys, I don't care. Watch my video. I'm going to try and get you to care. Okay, next, a great jazz album that came out in the last few years. I'm going to say 5 years, maybe 6 years ago. Kamasi Washington, the Epic. I'm dying to get this on vinyl. First of all, I love the cover. It's absolutely incredible. Kamasi is an amazing saxophone player. This album is so freaking good for uh, current jazz, um, really hip, and just I don't know how to describe it other than it's just a great, great jazz album. One of my favorite jazz albums of all time. I saw Kamasi play in Toronto at a small hall called the Phoenix Theatre, and yeah, just outstanding, outstanding album. The Epic, Kamasi Washington. I believe it's a triple vinyl album. Okay, you've heard me talk about Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, who are Canada's kind of super group with Colin Linden, Tom Wilson, and Stephen Fearing. I know my friend Irwin that tastes the dirt behind your ears or between your ear. Sorry, Irwin, I can't remember the exact title of your channel, but I love it. So my apologies. Um, he is a fan of Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, and he just mentioned Stephen Fearing in one of his videos. Well, Tom Wilson is just an awesome. He comes from Hamilton, Ontario, and just west of Toronto, and had his own career with a band called Junk House. They had a hit with a song called Shine back in the '90s, and Tom is awesome. He has an alter ego called Lee Harvey Osmond. How's that for a handle? And this was the first Lee Harvey Osmond album called A Quiet Evil. This album is so good. I'm going to describe it as kind of cowboy junkies. Got this kind of, I don't know, like a haunting kind of feel to it. Margot Timmons actually guests on this and sings one of the songs with Tom on this. Just a fantastic album. A Quiet Evil, Lee Harvey Osmond, Tom Wilson. Next would be number 20. We're down to the top 20. I'm going to go with a band that was it ended up with a ton of hits, real syrupy rock stuff, and I hated it. But I'll tell you, before that, their first two albums rocked the world. They were so freaking good. I got to see them open for Joe Walsh at Massey Hall when I'd never heard of them, and they just blew me and my buddies away when we went to see them. We instantly bought the first couple of records. But REO Speedwagon, REO 2, this is such a freaking good album. Just a great rock album. They do a killer version of Little Queenie, and their big epic song at the end, Golden Country. Gary Richrath, just a phenomenal guitar player. This is a great frickin' rock album, REO 2. If you're like me and you don't like those wimpy rock ballads that they did, you'll like this album, I guarantee it. Okay, we're going to go with a staple. I know I'm going back kind of, but I'm trying to pick an obscure album from these guys, the Rolling Stones. My favorite, I think the Rolling Stones get most of their attention from, maybe you can include Aftermath, but Beggar's Banquet on, to Exile is considered their kind of peak period, I think, and most people gravitate to those albums. But check out some early stuff. Rolling Stones Now. This is a freaking great, great record. It's got the hit Heart of Stone on it, but some of the guitar playing in this album is great, like Down the Road a Piece, and they do Little Red Rooster on this album. They do some Chuck Berry songs, You Can't Catch Me. They do Everybody Needs Somebody to Love on here. This is, besides those that period of albums I just discussed, this is my favorite Stones album. So Rolling Stones Now, give this early stuff a shot. Great, great record. Okay, number 18. An album I talk about that was so influential in my life and one of the great Roots albums of all time. Really should have ranked this in the top 10, but I didn't. And it's such an important album to me, and I think one of the greatest albums of all time. John Hartford's Steam-Powered Aeroplane. John kind of got well known on the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour. He'd come out with the long hair and play the banjo and play these quirky songs. And he wrote Gentle on My Mind, which Glenn Campbell's signature tune. the money that John made from that song being recorded by a million different artists enabled John to have a pretty good career doing what he wanted to do and putting out the music he wanted to put out. And Steam Powered Aeroplane is just a great album produced by David Bromberg. If you've never heard this album, give it a shot. Really helped me fall in love with acoustic music. Oh, number 17, a classic album. Most people, I guess, who are really into rock in the 60s and everything are probably aware of this album, but if you're not, I want to make a point of mentioning it. Mike Bloomfield, Al Kooper, Stephen Stills, Super Session. This is just an incredible record. The plan was for Al Kooper and Mike Bloomfield to go into the studio together, record some tunes, put out an album. Mike Bloomfield just got up and left the session. He's just that kind of dude right at that time, and just didn't want to do it anymore and left Al Kooper kind of hanging there. And Al Kooper got Stephen Stills in to finish the session. So there's a mixture of the two guitarists playing with Al Kooper, but just one killer version of Donovan's Season of the Witch is worth purchasing this album for. But great guitar work, great songs, three extremely, extremely talented people. So check out Super Session if you've never heard it. Okay, number 16, we are going with my favorite blues album of all time and one of my favorite guitar players of all time, Johnny Winter, Progressive Blues Experiment. This album is just unbelievably good. Just Johnny at his best and just dripping with blues. He does Rollin' and Tumblin'. He does Got Love If You Want It. Help Me, the Sonny Boy Williamson song. Broke Down Engine. Black Cat Bones on here. It's My Own Fault, Darlin' is on here, which is probably the killer track on the album. Just an amazing, amazing record. Johnny Winter, Progressive Blues Experiment. Okay, number 15. Dr. John, The Night Tripper. This is Dr. John's first album. Incredible record. He does Walk on Gilded Splinters on this, which is also, if you're familiar with the Humble Pie, Rockin' the Fillmore album, they do a version of it. But this was just psychedelic and freaky and good and lots of voodoo sprinkled all over it. Just a fantastic, fantastic debut album from the great Dr. John. Okay, number 14 would be this, one of the great guitar albums of all time, all acoustic guitar, 3 acoustic guitar masters live in San Francisco, Friday night in San Francisco, Al Demiola, John McLaughlin, Paco de Lucia. This is a amazing album, essential, a must-have for anyone's collection. 3 guitarists just playing their hearts out. It has a Latin feel, it has a rock feel, it has a progressive feel. It's just genius. That's all I got to say. Okay, we are down to the top 13 albums. I was messing around with my list and I changed things around. I got to move everything upside down. Sorry. Okay, number 13. I just did a video yesterday with Tom Williams. Oh, now I'm getting Tom's name mixed up. I'll put it in the description. Tom and I did a video on King Crimson, our top 10 King Crimson songs, and I wanted to put this album in here because Islands by King Crimson. I'm going to sneeze again. How's that? Geez, I hate that. Okay, Islands, King Crimson. Excuse me. Turning into one of my favorite King Crimson album, probably my second. Very melodic. It's not chaotic and heavy like the other King Crimson albums for the most part. Beautiful songs on here. The song Islands is absolutely gorgeous. Sailor's Tale, The Letters, Formentera Lady that starts it off this is an amazing record. King Crimson Islands. Okay, number 12. Best album from this band, and one of my favorite bands. Very rootsy. They can play anything, these guys. Los Lobos, Kiko. If you've never heard this album, another one you need to hear. This is considered their masterpiece, and it goes, from rock to, folky. It's all over the place, but every song is excellent. These guys are great players, great vocalists. Kiko is a fantastic album. Please check it out. The great Los Lobos. Awesome. Okay. Number 11. Steve Earle. Washington Square Serenade. This is Steve Earle's best album as far as I'm concerned. It was inspired when he moved to New York City, and it's very gritty street type of city album with lots of songs about the city. There's a song called City of Immigrants. There's a song called Oxycontin Blues. Just great. There's also a love song on here called Days Aren't Long Enough. He sings with his wife at the time, Alison Moyer, and it's just beautiful. But this is it was out of circulation for a while and really costly. This year they reissued it on a gold vinyl. If it's still available, grab it because it isn't going to last long, and it's a killer record. Washington Square Serenade. Okay, now we are down to the top 10. Anybody who's been watching me over the last few months know I have become a David Bowie fanatic. He has did the Bowie albums from Ziggy Stardust, Station to Station, Diamond Dogs. All those albums made me a fan, and I stayed a fan. And I liked Young Americans and Let's Dance. And then after that, I just went, David Bowie, I like him, but I don't pay much attention to him anymore. When Larry and I were doing our CD exchanges, Larry Graves, the Canadian Stud Muffin, he gave me David Bowie's Low album, and I wanted to hear it just because I was interested in what it was up to, but it blew me away. It got me right away. And there's some instrumental tracks on here that are incredible. Sound and Vision. The great instrumental track is Warzawa. I just absolutely love this album. It's my favorite David Bowie album, and got me back into Bowie. I started buying all the later stuff and box sets and went nuts. I'm Bowie obsessed, and this album is probably in my top 10 albums of all time now. So just shows, keep your mind open. Now number 9. Okay, I'm showing an album that probably everybody's aware of, but if you're not, you need to have this in your collection. Another one that's just absolutely essential. If you don't have it, your record collection's not complete. Van Morrison's Astro Weeks, my friend Randy's favorite album of all time. At one time, it was probably my number 2 album of all time. Still top 10. But Van Morrison Astro Weeks, this came out after he'd done Brown Eyed Girl, and I think when his album was getting released, there was an expectation it was going to be a pop rock album with a bit of, bluesy kind of feel to it. But no, he came out and he played with some jazz musicians and came out with this beautiful, beautiful album. It has so much atmosphere. The songs are all incredible. It's a perfect record. Astro Weeks, Van Morrison. Okay, next, the father of Led Zeppelin. If you've never heard this record and you like Zeppelin, you need to hear it. Jeff Beck, Truth. This album came out the year before the Zeppelin debut. You can hear the similarities. Rod Stewart on vocals, a young Rod Stewart, unknown, doing an incredible job. Rod was the best rock singer in the world back then, in my opinion. This album is You Shook Me On It, which is on Zeppelin 1. Beck's Bolero, which Bolero was added to how many more times on Zeppelin 1. There's a lot of similarities. Jimmy Page actually played on Beck's Bolero on this, and I believe Keith Moon played on this album too, um, or was yeah, I believe it was Keith Moon, and maybe John Paul Jones. But so Jimmy knew exactly what Jeff was up to with this stuff, and then just kind of took it to another level. But I really think this was the grandfather of Led Zeppelin, Jeff Beck Truth. Number 7, The Pretty Things. Now, The Pretty Things started out, actually, a couple of the guys played in a band with Mick and Keith before the Stones got going, and then the Stones got going, and then they broke off and started The Pretty Things. Early Pretty Things sounds a little like early Stones. It's pretty much the same stuff they were going for. But they did this album in 1970, I think it came out, Parachute. Now, this album was recorded at Abbey Road Studios, and it sounds so Beatley. It's got the same harmonies, and the songs are all catchy, and just an outstanding album. Parachute, The Pretty Things. Check it out. Okay, number 6. My musical hero, I talk about him all the time, Bela Fleck. Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, Flight of the Cosmic Hippo. This is a great album, up for Jazz Album of the Year when it came out. Bela is incredible. If he played any other instrument, a banjo, he would be Jimi Hendrix. He would be so much more well known, and but he decided to take his music and play it on a banjo. He could play anything he wants. He's an incredible musician, incredible composer, and the band he put together with Victor Wooten, who's a funk bass player. So this music it mixes bluegrass and jazz and funk, and just they come up with a unique sound, and one of the great albums of all time. Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, Flight of the Cosmic Hippo. Good luck finding this on vinyl. You can find it, but it'll probably cost you $3 or a number that starts with 3 numbers anyway. And Flight of the Cosmic Hippo, Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. Great record. Available on CD, though. Okay, number 5. We're down to the top 5. Big Star. Power pop at its best. This album is incredible. These guys put out 3 albums, I think. I have the first 2. I'm not sure about the third one at all. I can't speak to it. But this album is fantastic. Just great pop music. What can I say? My favorite song on the album is the second song called The Ballad of El Gudo, which is very cool. But this, if you've not heard Big Star and you just like Badfinger and the Beatles and bands like that, this album's for you. Big Star. Number 4. Man, the top 4 are just all so, like, could be number 1. All 4 of them could have been number 1. Spirit, 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus, one of my favorite albums of all time. Look at a psychedelic cover here, but this album is just amazing. It flows all the way through. The songs go from pop to rock to psychedelic to and everything in between. And there's some horns in it and guitar-driven stuff. The harmonies are absolutely incredible. Just an amazing record. 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus by Spirit. Okay, number 3, the band that I have just discovered over the past couple of years and is one of my top 5 bands of all time now. You've heard me talk about them until you're sick to death of hearing about it. Caravan, In the Land of Gray and Pink. Not only is that a beautiful album cover, this is an incredible record. I mean, just, wow, these guys just do it for me. I don't know what it is. The vocals, it's not heavy prog. It's quite melodic, and the vocals are very, I would say, almost folky in a way. They kind of remind me. They don't sound like Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but that kind of maybe Southern California's early '70s sound. They have a softer sound to their vocals anyway. But anyway, there's a great song on here called 9 Feet Underground on side 2, which blows me away. Just a fantastic album. Number 2. What could it be? What could it be? This was number 1, then I knocked it off just at the end there because another album, it just blows me away. Again, Larry Graves did a great video on this album the other day. I turned Larry onto this a few months ago. It's become one of his favorite albums of all time, and as well it should. It's a masterpiece. Gene Clark, no other. This album is fantastic. It's country rock. It's a singer-songwriter, great guitar work, beautiful vocals, great lyrics. Just another album where everything works to make just the perfect record. It's just the perfect record. Gene Clark's no other. Fantastic album. Number 1. Okay, this is the only album released in the past. When did it come out? I'm going to say 10 years ago, 12 years ago maybe. The only albums come out in the last decade or 2 decades that would be in my top 10 records of all time. Everything else would be older records from the 60s and 70s. And this album is just fantastic. It's a concept album. It's genius. I absolutely love it. Steven Wilson's Hand Cannot Erase. This is my number 1 album you got to hear before you die. I got to get this on vinyl. I've got it on a Blu-ray audio and I've got it on CD. So this album is based on the story of a young woman in England, true story of a young woman who kind of withdrew from society and let everybody think that everything was okay when it really wasn't. And eventually people just kind of forgot about her, and she died in her apartment, and they didn't find her for I don't know how long. It's just the saddest story, and Steven Wilson tells it just so well. It's tugs at your heartstrings lyrically, and there's some beautiful musical passages. It's very dynamic, this album. It goes from acoustic, soft, beautiful melodies to just like Rush type power guitar, and in between there's some stuff that sounds kind of Pink Floyd-ish, but start to finish it flows so beautifully. It's just a masterpiece how this album was put together. The playing is incredible. I got to see him do this album in its entirety at Massey Hall, and just one of the great concerts I've ever seen musically. And just Hand Cannot Erase, Steven Wilson. One of my favorite albums of all time. That's it for me. This is it. I hope you guys enjoyed the series. Please, this was going on a little long, so please press the like button. Tell me what you've been listening to and anything you've picked up. I've enjoyed a lot of the comments. So everyone, peace out. Have a great day. Thank you.